We're really excited to welcome you to our 46th annual sale on April 5th, 2025 at Gardiner Angus Ranch, starting at 9 a.m. And we're thrilled to be able to offer 1,250 Angus cattle, and we'll have 450 Angus bulls that will start promptly at 9 a.m. And I think what's so fun about these bulls is when we work towards making beef better, um, we're just excited about the tools we have and genetic predictions. And when we look at, you get tired of me talking about these uh, these traits, but these traits are what keep us in business. But we look at the average of that 450 head and that 11 calving knees in that range and the top 15 or so percent for the Angus breed. But then when we look at their growth traits being in that 15 percentile, also for where they rank within the population, and but not out of bounds for stature, right around breed average for stature. We've made a stated goal of where we want our marbling to be, and there's a lot of discussion, and rightfully so, because marbling is the trait that differentiates beef in the industry for value, and we've been able to add that for cattle as consumers wanted, and there's no cost when you add that to any of the rest of our operation. It's good stuff. It's free, but when you look at the average of the bulls, average in that 1.8 range, uh, that's fun. That's not 2.0, but that's getting us there. But that's top 1% of the Angus breed. And we look at the British breed, and we look at what we need to add and what we needed. 15 years ago, I would see a lot of 10 and 11-inch ribeyes on a lot of these British cattle crosses of customers and that we'd work with. And so I knew when you look at the ribeye per hundredweight equation for yield grade, and there's a lot of discussion about how we're going to moderate and change yield grade in the future, and that will come, but it's still going to take muscle, and we're going to do that. And today, ribeye is the tool that we use for muscle. And I don't know. I mean, people have asked me, you're going for two on marbling, you're going for two for ribeye. There's a point where there's a threshold and enough's enough. Um, and I don't know where that is, but I know we need to be more than one, because as we have these heavier carcasses, we need more ribeye per hundredweight. And these bulls are about 1.05, which puts them in that top 10% of the Angus breed. I don't know where that threshold is, but I think that gives us adequate muscling to go with that marbling. But it also gives us an adequate body type that's going to fit these forage environments. And so when you look at that, and when you look at their MPI through method genetics, their maternal production index, that's good stuff. That's what Bill and Sally have designed to help us make sure that we're improving our cow herd. And when we look at that MPI ranking in the top 25% of the entire method database, which is that benchmark database with our customers and clientele, all the people that have made this very focused selection for cattle with calving knees, early growth, in product merit, and the maternal function to replicate it. They've done this with DNA, with phenotypes, with ours, but so many of our customers too. And I think, here we are, it's February 11th of 2025, and, on U.S. Premium Beef's grid, I haven't seen one this week yet, but last week, prime was worth $36. Okay, so $36 on a 1,000-pound carcass, you do the math, but that's $360. That is real. And so when we look at that and we look at that opportunity, but we look at an opportunity of those cows that have an MPI in their genetics uh, to make cows better, to replicate those processes in the forage environment, and have all these other traits that make us money too, that's opportunity. And that is so very exciting. And, after the bulls, we're looking at offering nearly 300 registered females. We'll have our normal donor categories. You're going to see a little video about the 332, and we're so excited to offer you a dozen or so of our back to traditional open donor cows that have been collected, but they're open, they're functioning, and they're ready to go for you. And the benefit of an older cow is she's going to produce more embryos. She's going to have a higher conception rate than a heifer would typically have with that age. And I think that is so exciting. But what is so necessary when we talk about picking a donor, I've always joked you can give any of them FSH, and we're old school. We do traditional ET. I mean, and you can do IVF on any of them. But I think what the key is on donors is we're not just trying to achieve reproduction, we're trying to achieve genetic improvement. And so, yes, they're a 2-year-old cow, but they're elite enough and they rank within the population at such a level that they're just as good as their maternal and paternal sisters that are going to sell, you know, as 15-month-old, 18-month-old females that we've been collecting as heifers. And those heifers are reaching an age where that physiological change in them to make them, but these cattle are so unique in the population. And, you know, I mentioned Richard McClung and Rita 5H11 and the donor history that I've been able to work with. And Richard was so good at making those elite superstar donors. And I always wanted to make a fleet of donors. And Richard was right, and I think I was right too, in the standpoint of, you know, I want to raise not one, but 100 of them. I want to raise the entire average, and I want to keep raising the average. And the old seed stock model was you get Susie Q, and she's the donor, and I'll sell just a few Susie Qs, but I'll never sell Susie Q. And I was too dumb to understand why. I go, why don't we sell Susie Q while she still has value and life in her? So Susie Q, we'll go back to maybe some of our first donor cows that had magnitude. And I mean, you know, Scotch Cap 199, 309, you know, 509. Those were out of Rita 5H11. Those were some of our first high magnitude donors. But then you go to 2536 and 706 and on down the line. We sold all of those. And we did that when they were very young, to where their whole life was in front of them. Because if I do my job right, then I can share those genetics with you, and they have their whole life in front of you. So I think that opportunity to only operate and offer the very best that we have. You know, I've often teased and said, you know, we sell them all. And, you know, we're going to sell them all. We're going to sell the very best. And we've always done it. In the old days, it was through the red barn, and today it's through the purple barn, which, interestingly enough, my friend Deb Norton and I'm going like, you know, 2016, you count from 2016 to 2025. That's 10 years, okay? 2016 is year one. We've had 37 sales through that purple barn and run a lot of cattle, and we're so thankful, so many people that have helped us by buying those cattle and using them in their families and their herds to make a living. That's humbling, okay? That's a lot of cattle, but that's what we do. And so there was an old Jay Leno commercial, and he'd hold up this bag of Doritos, and he would say, "If you will buy these, I will make some more." Okay, so when you're selling Doritos, or more importantly, high-value Angus cattle, I think it is so necessary. It's like, it's got to hurt when you sell them. I mean, I've already told you that 332 is one of my favorite cows of all time. That's a number that'll be in my head forever, just like 2536, 5H11, 867, 2345, 830, 1885, Prophet's Mother. Every time I start listing cows, well, you forgot this cow, or you forgot that cow. You didn't talk about my cow. I love them all, but the ones that distinguish themselves and the ones that sold very well were actually the ones that made the most money for whoever owned them, because they used those cows to make beef better. And so this opportunity with genetic predictions and with genomics and with the tools we have, it gets faster and faster and faster, the acceleration of improvement. And on one hand, that's exciting. On the other hand, that's very necessary. So we're living today in historic markets. And let's think about, why is that historic? And, you know, we can talk about supply and demand, and that's real. But let's think about what American agriculture has done and the American beef industry done. You know, we're at a 64-year low for cows. Are we producing less beef today? No. We're producing the same amount of beef. So we've added some value genetically in the efficiency, and even the management of those cows and how we're feeding them into the end point. And we're fortunate, you know, with the corn crop being what it was and cost of gain. I can get as low in the weeds as you'd like to go on all these things, but all those things are always rolling in my head. But what is really differentiated in the marketplace is the demand for beef. You know, many of you know the story of U.S. premium beef. Many of you know the evolution of value-based marketing and grid marketing. And in 1996, we weren't very good, okay? Our product wasn't very good. And then you look at the birth of U.S. premium beef, and you look at those value-added grids, and you look at, you know, just watch the price of certified Angus beef and the demand equation from 1998 till today. And it's almost linear, because all of a sudden we've incentivized these better cattle that the consumers actually desired. We've put the demand with the incentive to be able to start creating these cattle that our consumers desired. So instead of being in the war on fat with pork and poultry, now all of a sudden we were doing what we could do so well with this ruminant animal that can convert cellulose into the greatest tasting beef in the world, the greatest tasting protein in the world. And I think when we remember those fundamentals, remember that cow's got to fit our environment, but we remember the value. We're in a different market today than we were in 1996, 97. You know, it's no different than 1978. Why did American Angus start certified Angus beef? Well, it was a response to lowering the quality grade in 1976 or so. We need more choice cattle, so let's just lower the standards. American Angus said that is wrong. But one of the real reasons that they did that, we were in big trouble as a breed and a breed association. We were the shorty blacks. We didn't have our cattle documented. They didn't fit very well. But it took 9 years before the first premium ever came. And then it really took until about 1998 until we started incentivizing these cattle that the consumers wanted and grid marketing to start changing that value equation. So today, when you look at the price of beef and you look at I would call it the protein of celebration, you know, when you're going to celebrate, you know, your birthday or your Christmas, or, you know, you got engaged, you had a new baby, you know, a lot of people like to celebrate that with the greatest tasting protein in the world, and that's beef, okay? And so you look at certified Angus beef and what they've done, and I won't get the years exactly right, but approaching a decade now, they've sold more than 1,200 million pounds of certified Angus beef, and that's the highest value beef that there is. So we go through all that and we look at what making beef better is all about, and it's by multiplying these kind of cattle that will genetically hit these targets of economic magnitude. So we're excited for those 450 bulls that we're going to sell that will sire the next generation of cattle that will truly exceed on these traits. Nearly 300 registered females that will do the same thing for our seed stock friends and colleagues. And we're really excited about the 450 bred commercial heifers that we will offer in groups of 10. You know, we'll have them sorted in method genetics, ROI order, and grouped up on their breeding dates, and we'll have them, you know, their AI date and when they're going to breed. And these are our home-raised heifers that came from our program, clear back from Ralph Gardiner. You know, I think about Ralph Gardiner, and you know, and I often think, you know, they go, "Oh, you're just an Angus nerd, Gardiner," and yeah. And I remember having Angus fever as a kid, and I was all excited. It's the business breed, and we're going to do all these things. And I said, "Hey, Dad, did Granddad get those first Angus cattle in 1931 because he knew Angus were so good and they were efficient, the calving needs, the quality of the meat, their ability to replicate it in these range environments?" He's like, "Oh, heck no. Ralph Gardiner was a contrarian. Everybody else had Herefords, so he got Angus cattle to be different." And so today, when we don't want to be different, we want to be the best we can be. And Angus cattle aren't better because they're black. Angus cattle are better because they're predictable. And we're very proud of our cattle with all the genetic merit that we've been able to put through 60 years plus of total AI. And for at this point in time, you know, well, 45 years of ET, and it's like begets like, and they keep getting better. And so I think that is exciting. I think that is opportunity. And when you look at 450 heifers with method genetics, EPDs, bred to the best bulls of the Angus breed to calve next September, that's exciting. So we'd like to invite you to that 46th annual sale. And you know, I always want to learn something. We want to learn something together. And, you know, we feel an obligation to educate ourselves, but we want to share that education. And I'm always excited about our programs and my friends and I that helped me design these, you know, Deb Norton, Julie Tucker, and Cogent. I mean, we always are pushing ourselves. How do we get something that's interesting? And I think we've got 4 young ladies that are going to be just amazing, and they're all different in what they do. There's a young lady from Loco, Comanche, Oklahoma, Whitney Hall, that I've watched her grow up. One of my best friends is Shannon Hall, and Whitney is a young lady that's was educated and come home and running the ranch, and it's very traditional on one side from the way they use horses and how they go about doing it, but they use cowboy logic with science, and they apply that, and they're such good stewards of the land and how they take care of those cattle. And so Whitney's young and energetic and doing such a tremendous job. And so we'll just go down the line, and we'll go up to Garden City, Kansas with Marissa Hans Kleistuber. And, you know, Sam Hans is legendary and a friend and an educator of us all. Well, this is Sam's daughter, and she's married to her good friend and customer, John Kleistuber. But Marissa Hans Kleistuber is running Triangle H, you know, operations, and you know, Sam and her still work together on the feed yard, and they have a major farming operation, cow calf and stockers. But she's an amazing individual, how she's putting all this together, and they use crop residues and some various forage rotations, and she's very, very astute. I mean, it's kind of atypical to have a young lady running a feed yard and doing all these things, but she's amazing at it. And she, you know, she just didn't just come out and say, I'm loving to do this. Well, you know, I mean, she'll be wonderful. And I want to learn from Marissa. And I've learned from Marissa watching what she's doing with Triangle H's business. And one of the common denominators you're going to hear here is what tremendous people they are. And so let's move down the road to Buckland, Kansas, Rob and Sylvia Sellard and Sellard Farms. And Sylvia, I quote her from her resume as we put this together for the catalog. Well, we're contrarians, and you know, we just do things very differently. And when I called her and asked her to be on this panel, she's like, well, you don't want me. We do everything different than everybody else. I go, I want to learn from that. And from what I've seen and what they have done with their cattle and how they use their crops and their grass and their feed they raise, and all the ways that they make all of that farming operation into value for their family with cattle, that's good stuff. And, you know, I can't think of anything more exciting than learning from somebody that thinks differently and does things differently, because that's opportunity for us all. And there's a young lady that I've never met in person. She's done a lot of writing for us. Her name is Paige Nelson from Idaho. And I got through the grapevine that Paige was going to join us. And I saw a resume of Paige's, and I won't even begin to do that justice, but I'm like going, my God, I feel like a slacker. You know, the things that she has done, and when we look at American agriculture and we look at what this next generation brings, and we look at her effort and her thought and how she goes about it, and some of it's traditional, some of it's non-traditional. But, you know, many of you have heard me say the Henry phrase, well, you know, we can do this, so let's get to doing it. And so when you look at that and you look at what Paige Nelson has done with her family and non-traditional, that's exciting. And then we're going to have all this moderated with our industry friend and analyst, Dr. Neville Spear, who's one of the great thinkers that I know, and he'll ask such invigorating questions, and he'll help us lead this discussion in a way where we all learn more. That's exciting. So that's on April 4th, supper at 5 p.m., program at 6. We're truly thankful for you to come and join us. And, you know, I think back to the 2020 sale and the grand plan. I don't like the word D word, so I call it the grand plan celebration. And that's a whole different story where they were going to cancel our celebration due to COVID. But this is a celebration of our friends, our family, our customers, how we can all get together and make beef better.